Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shades of Entrepreneurship. This is your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. Today, I'm here with another Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregonian entrepreneur, Monique Hayward. Monique, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Gabriel. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, we are, folks. We are sitting here in a beautiful, gloomy, rainy Oregon day that we actually probably needed more than the rain needed us at this point. I know Oregonians probably aren't used to saying we want more rain, but we needed it. So, Monique, please introduce yourself. Give us a little background. Who is Monique Hayward?
Sure. I will absolutely tell you who Monique Hayward is. I am an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm a marketing executive, and I'm a speaker. So I have a multifaceted career that I have been building for the last, oh gosh, 25, 30 years now. It's hard to even believe. But what brought me actually to the Pacific Northwest was a job that I took with a company called Tektronix. And for those of you who are, in the Pacific Northwest, in the Silicon Forest, you know that Tektronix was one of those early founding companies that actually laid the foundation for the high technology industry here. And so when I took the job at Tektronix coming out of MBA school, I first of all did not know who Tektronix was. I I also did not have any idea where Beaverton, Oregon was. And I sure enough said Oregon because I'm from the East Coast originally. I split my childhood between New York City and Columbia, South Carolina. And at that point in my life, in my early 20s, I had never been west of the Mississippi. And for those of you who are old enough to remember the mid 1990s, we were in a pretty serious economic situation around 1992, 1993, 94. And I had graduated from college at the University of Maryland and decided to go to grad school at Case Western Reserve University so that I could hide out for 2 years because the economy was so bad. Right? And so, still coming out, 2 years later, I only had this one job offer from a company that I had never heard of that found me in a resume book of all things. And when I got on the phone with the recruiter, I just started asking really elementary questions like, where is Beaverton, Oregon? Can you please tell me what Tektronix is? And how did you find me? Because I don't have any idea. And it was one of those teachable moments. And the recruiter took pity on me and was still impressed enough with me and my background and my expertise that I got invited to interview for the position. It was a marketing and communication specialist job, and I flew out to the Portland area. Stayed in a hotel downtown Portland, and had an opportunity to look at the city and meet the team. And next thing you know, I had a job and I was moving to the Pacific Northwest, and I've been here for 30 years now already. Hard to believe.
You see, folks, once you actually come and visit the Pacific Northwest, it's very difficult to leave. We're kind of a
Yeah,
hidden gem out here.
yeah, exactly. And so from there, I launched my career at Tektronix, and then I went to Intel, and I worked at Intel for 22 years. And the way that I like to describe my career at Intel was that I moved around to move up. And so I worked in every organization within Intel, with the exception of sales, manufacturing, and finance. Every other part of the business I worked in. And then back in 2019, I left Intel, went to Microsoft, and then I did a couple of senior director marketing jobs at Microsoft. And then now I am with a Silicon Valley startup that is in the digital experience document publishing space. And the company is called Enactify.ai. And I'm the chief marketing officer for that company. So alongside my corporate career, I've had an entrepreneurial career, and so I owned a restaurant business here locally, which was called Dessert Noir Cafe and Bar in Beaverton, and I had that for about 4.5, 5 years. I also was a partner in a software company back when iPhone apps were, kind of just getting hot, and then my current venture is a personal chef business and a short-term vacation rental property that's based in Phoenix, Arizona.
Man,
So
you
that's
have no
that's the
idea.
short story.
Yeah, that's the short story of the version of
Yeah.
the biograph. No, I love it. I love the diversity of it. I'm very much in the same boat as you are. I think when you're Intel days, where I very much move around and move up.
Yeah.
I've been working at Oregon Health Science University, so folks that listen to the show, they're very much aware. I've been working at OHSU for the past 22 years, and it really is, learning from patient transportation from the clinical side, working in the ED, working in concierge services, right? The front now primarily in business development strategy. And so being able to take all of those little pieces and then combine them into their business strategy has been very unique, because I think one piece that tends to get overlooked that we're going to be talking about today is the marketing piece, and why that marketing piece is so important, because I don't think people realize when you're doing a sales funnel or a marketing funnel, it's imperative that they work in collaboration. It's imperative that they are interlocked. So when you're going out and you're doing outreach, I know if I'm actually utilizing a specific marketing collateral, then I know what my end goal from a sales perspective is, right? So
Yes.
it's hand in hand. So tell us about one of the things you mentioned. You started at Tektronix. You're being primarily focusing on the marketing side. So tell us some of the things you kind of learned in that Tektronic world from the marketing side, and then we'll kind of transition, because you kind of just take off from there.
Right, exactly. So I started out my career, like I said, as a marketing and communication specialist, and a lot of my sense and sensibility about how I approach marketing is really rooted, honestly, Gabriel, in having studied journalism. Actually, because my ambition in my career was to actually be a journalist. That's what I grew up wanting to do. I wanted to be a political reporter for the Washington Post. I mean, I was like that specific with my career goal. But then when I got to journalism school at the University of Maryland, which was, a top 10 J school right outside of Washington, D.C., I was like, okay, I'm in the heart of it. This is where I'm going to go and I'm going to learn. And also, by the way, minor in government and politics, right? Like, okay, like this is it. But then, not that I was prescient at all about the internet and what it was going to do to decimate the newspaper industry, I just decided that I needed to make more money. And so I stayed in the journalism school, but I switched my concentration to public relations. And then that laid the foundation for the corporate career. And then that also laid a foundation around how I could use the sense and sensibility of being a journalist, right? The clear and credible and consistent communication, the deadline driven aspect of being able to deliver things on time and on a budget, making sure that you are a great storyteller and that you keep your audience in mind constantly. It's not about you as the storyteller, it's about how you serve the audience that you are trying to reach, those kinds of things, right? And so combining that with the marketing training and the marketing education, that is how I actually became this B2B marketer extraordinaire, if you will, whose career kind of took off at Tektronix, and then into Intel and into Microsoft later. So I have worked on very big campaigns, as you might imagine, working for big Fortune 500, Fortune 100 tech companies like Tektronix, Intel, Microsoft. And then scale that down to where I am right now, where a startup with sort of that's just barely above two guys and a dog in a garage with an idea, and and they actually did have the sense and sensibility to bring on the marketing function sooner rather than later, because I think a lot of startups and a lot of small businesses tend to have marketing as an afterthought, and don't necessarily think about what are the stories that they're really trying to tell to their customers, what are the actions that they really want them to take, how does marketing really enable for you to develop those relationships with potential customers, with existing customers, with key stakeholders, right? There's an art and a science to it, and I think that a lot of times we as entrepreneurs get so heads down into the product, or so heads down into the business, and so heads down all of those other responsibilities, that we don't tend to think that much about marketing until we absolutely 100% can't avoid it anymore.
It's really funny you bring that up. I feel like sometimes, especially the larger corporations, tend to think about marketing like, oh, we got to make more revenue, or we gotta promote this new thing or idea without really understanding, okay, well, what's the value that what's the ROI? In that
Yeah.
marketing piece, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so many often, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but there's some really good marketing and there's some really bad marketing. I think really good marketing, Apple does a really good job. I like to use this example. When you look at it, they had this newspaper ad when the AirPod came out, the first AirPod, right? And
Yeah.
again, the beauty of it, this is a print ad. So it's not like it's very difficult to invoke emotions on a print ad. However, what they were able to do is a photo of the iPod and said 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was
Yes. I
that
remember
was
that
it.
campaign very well.
And the beauty of it, it's like, oh man, I'm like, I didn't even know I needed 1,000 songs in my pocket. And now not only do I need it, I want it. And not only am I going to want it, but I'm going to go buy it and I'm going to tell everybody that I have 1,000 songs in my pocket. You know,
Right.
it's like that's the true sales funnel approach, right? And now one of the things you mentioned is you went from Tektronix and you went from Microsoft and you went to Intel, but then you also have your own businesses. You mentioned your restaurant and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Talk about building a business from the ground up while navigating marketing and branding challenges.
Yes. So I'll tell you. Let me start with my restaurant business
Perfect.
because I'm actually one of those people who Anthony Bourdain used to sort of question the wisdom around why would any professional outside the restaurant business think that they can be a restaurant owner, right? And and I was like just on the hairy edge of the person who really should or should not be a restaurant owner. But I use that experience as an opportunity to do a couple things. Number one was that to get beyond my technology career, when I was in my mid 30s, I was finding myself, you know, I don't know, disillusioned is probably too strong, but certainly wanting more out of my career than just doing marketing and communications campaigns to promote technology products, for high tech companies, right? And I felt like, I always had this entrepreneurial spirit that was, instilled in me by my grandmother. So my grandmother was a beauty salon owner in Harlem. And so she lived in the Bronx, and so her night job was as a nurse for a psychiatric hospital in Queens, and she would work the night shift, and then she would come home to her apartment in the Bronx, and then get herself organized for getting some sleep and maybe getting a little breakfast or whatever, and then she would be up and fight the rush hour traffic into the city, to go into Manhattan so that she could open up her salon and do her salon business all day. So, and over the summers, my brother and I would visit my grandma and hang out with her, when school was out, and she would drag us kicking and screaming to the salon. So we would have to, listen to, all these ladies who were getting their hair done and whatever all day long, and helping my grandmother out around the shop and all this stuff. And my brother and I used to hate it. I mean, we was like, God, this is so boring. Why can't we just be out in the street, playing handball or stickball or something? Right? Why do we have to be in the salon? And so, but years later, I reflected on that and I said, you know what? My grandmother was onto something with me and inspiring me to think about how I could also do the same thing. And so I was able to take a step back at that point in my career and say, what is it that I want to do? How do I want to add value? How can I really make a difference in my community? And how could I do something different? And I decided on a restaurant business because of my own, just like a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening right now, or aspiring entrepreneurs who are listening right now. It all starts with some personal pain that you have experienced. And you figure that, what, if I had this problem, somebody else had this problem. And the problem that we had out here in Beaverton, Oregon, was that we didn't have good dining options. So this was, early 2000s. So we're talking 2004, 2005. I mean, the scene has exploded a lot since
Oh yeah,
then.
definitely.
But out here in the suburbs, we did not have good options for what I would call kind of that segment in between fast, casual, and super duper high end fine dining. You always had to kind of go downtown Portland, right? And so, and with the traffic and all the hassle and all that, it was just really, kind of inconvenient. And so my husband and I happened to be out to watch a movie one night at a at a movie theater out here in the suburbs close to our house. And we wound up having to take a rain check on the movie because they had oversold it and there weren't very good seats left. And so we wound up, we'd already eaten dinner, and we were like, okay, where can we go to just like get a good cocktail, get dessert, or whatever? And there was no place to go. We wound up at like Starbucks or something. Totally crazy. So that's how the idea of Dessert Noir Cafe and Bar was born. And so I use that as my own little marketing laboratory. And because I come from a marketing background, it was my mission with my business to try to get as much publicity for that place as I possibly could. And I leaned into, I think, three things that I will share as kind of best practices with entrepreneurs when it comes to marketing your own business. First of all, number one, you have got to be a fearless promoter of yourself and your business because nobody else is going to do it for you. Number two, you have to have a compelling story that makes you unique and makes you differentiated from other business owners who are doing businesses like yours. And then number three is that you have just got to ensure that you are disciplined with investing in that marketing program execution day after day after day. And I tell you, it will yield fantastic results. In fact, when I had my restaurant business, I too was covered by the Oregonian. I got awards for, best bites when they were doing that back in the day. I got covered. I was getting like a story a week, at one point when I first launched my business. And then that tapered off to a story a month. We had gotten covered not just locally, but we also got covered nationally. So I was on CNN. We got covered in the Wall Street Journal, right? So, I mean, these kinds of things that most small businesses would kill for that kind of publicity. And the thing that I really leaned in on from a storytelling perspective was, African American woman living in Beaverton, Oregon, running her own restaurant business, with not a whole lot of competition around, and ensuring that we actually had these great places and great spaces that were moving the dining conversations forward, moving fine dining forward for this part of of the metro area. And people really did resonate with that story. So
You know,
so
I,
that's what I did.
I love it. And folks, I got to tell you, you have folks that are unfamiliar with the Oregon area. I know exactly what Starbucks Monique is talking about because this is the only Starbucks. For some reason, it was open 24 hours a day back in the day. So it was constantly
Yeah.
open. And I got to tell you, the Beaverton food and beverage scene 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, even like a little bit before the pre-pandemic, was a little scarce.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, folks, the amount of work in the food scene that has gone on the Southwest side, it should be no surprise to anyone that Cedar Hills is now one of the actually most sought after neighborhoods in the Oregon area, including like Lake Oswego in Northwest Portland. So you're starting to see the Beaverton location really come up. And for those folks that are listening, Beaverton is not Portland Metro. Okay. Hillsborough is not Portland Metro. Forest Grove is not Portland Metro. Clackamas is not. So if you're going to create something for the community of Clackamas, Washington, and Multnomah County, and you put the word Metro on it, I automatically think that is not for me because I'm out in the Southwest area. I'm not downtown Portland, in the metro area. So just some things to think about, those city community folks that are putting things together. Because again, I'm part of this community. I'm with you guys across the table, and now I'm telling you guys on the podcast. If you name things metro, it's not for me. I'm not in the metro. So just want to bring that out. And folks,
That's funny.
and folks, you can read about this again. Check out theshadesofE.com. Please subscribe to the newsletter. We have a lot of this content. In fact, I will write up a thing after Monique's conversation, specifically talking about one of the things I'm really interested in to learn about from Monique, the 5 C's framework. Tell me about the 5 C's framework and how does it empower entrepreneurs to thrive?
Yes, the 5 C's framework. So that was born out of my experience as a role model, a mentor, an advocate for um, people who are coming up as entrepreneurs and as professionals who are just starting out in their careers or making the transition from uh, being in corporate America into being an entrepreneur. And I would do a lot of one-on-ones. I would do a lot of small group discussions. And then that actually turned into bigger presentations that I would do on these topics. And then eventually I wrote a book and decided that, I think that I actually have something that I can promote here, being the marketing person, of course. And so in my book, what I did was I addressed a lot of the challenges and opportunities that people faced when they are in these critical, pivotal moments in their career. Right. And like I said, particularly as you're starting something new, whether you're, just right out of school and starting your first job, or you're starting your first business. And you've got to think about what I call how to get your hustle on, right? And the 5 C's really help with giving you this easy to use, easy to remember framework that you can work within to keep your career and to keep your business moving forward. And the 5 C's are as follows. Number one is competence. That's the foundation. If you don't know how to do something, if you have no skills, you have no experience, you have like nothing that you can kind of lean into, that is just done, right? I mean, it's table stakes these days that you must be competent at what you do. Now, if you don't have a lot of experience, that doesn't mean that you don't know something, right? You're still building up, right? And there are ways for you to demonstrate your competence without having a lot of experience. And we can talk about that too. So that's the first thing. You got to have a really strong foundation upon which to build the other 4 C's. The next one is cachet. That's your personal brand. Who are you and why does anybody care? Right? The second one is communication, and that is your storytelling. What is your message? Who is your target audience? What are you trying to get them to do? You tell stories to your friends and your family without any intention of eliciting any action from them. And that's fine because that's how we all communicate, on a day-to-day basis. But in business, you're telling your story because you want people to do something. You want them to buy your product. You want them to sign up for your newsletter. You want them to listen to your podcast. You want them to, put money in your pocket. So when you are telling your story, you really got to be clear about the intention that you want with delivering that message to your audience. The next C is is connections. Who in your network is helping you right now at this moment with what it is that you are trying to achieve in your business, in your career, and otherwise. A lot of times what happens as especially we get farther into our careers, we don't do enough housekeeping, people, right? We're hanging on to folk. We're taking too many meetings. We're trying to be everywhere. We're trying to do too much for everybody else. You have got to get really clear about who is in your network. How are those people helping you right now? And how are you building those relationships for success in your career and in your business? I tell you, you got to get rid of the hangers on and you got to stop taking every meeting because it's wasting your time. And then the last C is coaches. And those are your sponsors, your mentors, your role models, your advocates. Those are the people who are giving you good, sound advice about where you are in your career, what it is you're trying to do with your business, and how is it that you are going to be successful? One of the key tactics, if you will, that I always recommend that entrepreneurs, as well as people in their career, at any stage in their career, need to execute against is a personal board of directors, right? Get those 5 people, and please no more than 5, right? Because again, if you start talking to a whole lot of people, you get too much contact, too much, conflicting advice, too much, too many people that you're trying to juggle at any point, trying to get stuff done. Get it down to the 5 people who who you can trust, who will give you good advice, and make sure that it's a diverse set of opinions and perspectives, right? You don't want an amen corner. You don't want an echo chamber. You want a real personal board of directors who will tell you when your stuff is janky, who will tell you when, you're on the right path and that you should keep going, or people who will sit down with you and strategize when you're backed in a corner and you can't see what the logical path should be. Then there are three people who you can call. So when I first started as an entrepreneur, as you might imagine with a restaurant business, what wound up happening, what put my business out of business was the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. And so I was, just really struggling, trying to figure out how I was going to either keep that business or shut it down. And from a personal board of directors perspective, I had one really key advisor who was absolutely instrumental, and it happened to be Morgan Freeman. Yes, that Morgan Freeman, the actor, like that guy. And yes, and the voice is the voice, right? Like you just know. And so when I was struggling with whether or not I was going to keep Dessert Noir Cafe and Bar as a going concern, I got myself on a plane and went down to Los Angeles and had a one-on-one with Morgan Freeman. And you know what he told me? Let me tell you, Gabriel, what that man told me. He said, "You know what, Monique? Because I went down there thinking I was going to stay in business. I had a notebook full of notes because I was strategizing, right, for weeks before that meeting. I was like, okay, this is what I got covered. This is how much money I got in the bank. These are all my top customers. This is what my marketing strategy looks like. This is how I'm going to pay my people. This is how I'm going to pay my vendors. I had it. This is who I can get money from in the bank. This is like, I had it all laid out. So then when I showed up to the meeting, Gabriel, he looked across me at the table. He's like, you know what, Monique? I'm going to tell you something. You're going to shut that business down. I was like, what? I said, Morgan, what? He said, no, girl. And this is how he talks to me, right? He's like, no, girl, this is what's going to happen right now. I'm going to tell you three things. And I want you to listen to me, and I want you to listen to me very clearly. And I said, okay, I'm listening. I put my pen down, put my notebook down. And he said, number one, you have made a good run at that business. You've been in business for 4+ years. That is a lifetime for a restaurant business. And he knew this because he actually owned restaurant businesses himself in Mississippi. So he's speaking from experience, right? He's like, I know that that's a hard business. And for you to have lasted this long and, have come across like that finish line, yes, it was an accomplishment. You are going to be just fine. Number one. Number two, you have a day job. He's like, let's be clear. You at this point, I was still working at Intel. He's like, you have a fantastic career at Intel and you are not broke. Number three, that restaurant business is never going to define you for the long term. That might be a failure right now, but you know what? You are going to come out of that on top. And of course, Gabriel, I had shivers. I even have I get goosebumps just even thinking about being in the same room with Morgan Freeman and having him giving me that clear direction and that clear advice about what I needed to do in that moment. And he said that at that point, go back to Portland and shut that business down and get on with your life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And sure enough, within 2 weeks of me coming back, the thing was done. And I was winding everything down. And he was absolutely right about what happened to me with my career. I wrote my first book and it took off. I got promoted twice at Intel. And I got on the speaking circuit and I, started to tell my story. And it was an amazing time in my career. And it also set me up for starting my next business. So when I tell you, and when I tell your audience who's listening, a personal board of directors, you must have that one person, that sage counselor who will tell you the truth, right? Even if you can't see it, you need somebody who is going to tell you that truth. Because if you get on the wrong path, I could have easily spent another $100,000, $100,000, right? Trying to save my business. And at that point, by the time I got to Morgan, I'd already spent $50,000 that I shouldn't have spent, right? So Yes, have truth tellers. Have somebody who will sit you down and shake you up and say, listen, this is what you need to do, right? And help you come to that conclusion, right? And help you come to that conclusion. Because he knew it was my decision, but he made it very clear as to why I needed to make that decision.
Yeah, I really love the advice. Like a personal board of directors or advisory board. Individuals that are willing to, you're willing to share your ideas with, but you're also willing to get constructive feedback from. I would advise that don't have that board of directors or advisors be like your family and friends. Have it truly
Yeah.
individuals within a business industry or vertical that you're trying to explore, so they can, to your point, even if it's Morgan Freeman, at least this individual has experience in the food and beverage industry, so they can really talk to you specifically about what some of those needs are. I really like that idea. And in fact, I always encourage folks at the end of the day, I mean, Kobe Bryant, who arguably is one of the best NBA basketball players, you can have that argument, that's fine. But you can pick any NBA player that you ever see, every single one of those individuals had a coach. So
That's right.
the greatest individuals that made it to the Hall of Fame had coaches. And so I really like also like the communication and marketing piece. Folks, that's probably why you hear me consistently say throughout this podcast to visit theshadesofE.com, to subscribe to the newsletter, right? Because that's the marketing piece, the sales funnel. And then when you actually subscribe to the marketing piece, folks, don't be surprised if you get, a 10% discount to go shop on our shop. Because again, that's my marketing funnel, trying to get you to make a purchase, right? To help you to continue to support the show. Or you might even get a letter that says, hey, for $5 a month, you can join our Patreon and you can actually get these interviews a week early. Again, now I have a loyal consumer. Or even more, I might see one of your comments that you left on Apple Podcast reviews, and I might actually take that and post it on my website, theshadesofE.com, that you can actually see several transcriptions of individuals and their comments about the show. Because again, I'm trying to create synergy with the community, but also letting you folks know that listening, hey, I'm listening to you as well, just as much as I hope you guys are listening to me. Now, Monique, I think you're kind of felt like you're talking directly to me there for a minute, because I got to tell you, I've been doing this podcast for a little over 3 years now. And I think folks that listen to me, they know I keep going back and forth. And this last year, because of the marketing, because of me getting more consistent, I'm able to drop out. I'm releasing about one video a day on YouTube. So folks, check it out, the shadesofE.com. Go and check out the YouTube postings there. But about one video a day. And ever since I started doing it at the beginning of the year, the consistency of it has been skyrocketed, the value of the show. We're now seeing roughly 10,000 downloads per 28 days on YouTube, which is quite remarkable. But I'm also kind of at this point, like, okay, well, where does this go? Where do we want to do it? We started the nonprofit Latino Founders to help scale 100 Latino businesses here in the Pacific Northwest to $1 million recurring revenue in 5 years. So now we're starting to create, another business along with that. So now I'm kind of contemplating, okay, what does the Shades of Entrepreneurship look like? I got the trademark for the Shades of E. Where do I go next? And so that's actually the conversation I am in right now with myself. But I like the idea because I currently do not have an advisory board, a personal advisory board. And one thing I do say to people pretty consistently is, at the end of the day, you're the average of the 10 people you hang out with the most, right? So you want to
That's
make
for sure.
sure, yeah, it's like Monique said, and maybe break it down to 5, so it's less of a variance. But again, making sure you surround yourself with individuals that aren't going to blow smoke at you. You want individuals that are truly going to tell you whether this thing is going to fail or succeed. I like the way Monique mentioned it. And again, I hope I don't offend anybody, but I always encourage folks, don't be afraid to kill your baby. You can't be afraid to kill your baby. If it's the greatest idea ever, and oh my God, this is going to make $1 million, I just need to tweak it here and there. Well, truth be told, especially like in the tech industry, if you brought out a software or service, or you don't have a customer, adding one more attribute to it probably isn't going to bring in a consumer. I always encourage folks, if you think you're a thought leader, well, then go put your thoughts out in the market and see what the market tells you. That's the best way for you to begin to determine, okay, I think that's where the connections piece that you're mentioning comes into, right? And making sure you have people that are truly willing to say, this is a horrible idea, or no, this is a great idea, because then those people in those network will start to be like, you know what, actually, you should go talk to this person, or you should go talk to this person. It's almost like you begin to outgrow some of your network. And then Monique kind of mentioned that too. don't hang on to the stragglers, the people that are weighing you down. I love my group text boys. I do, but sometimes the negativity I get in that, it's like, oh my gosh, boys, like I can't even tell you something good happened because it just turns into a battle. Yeah, it's just like, well, again, the average of the 10 people we hang out with the most. So again, be very strategic and mindful about who you're trying to bring involved in your community, but also share those ideas, because chances are there's somebody that may be able to help support that idea, or they might also be able to tell you that the idea is actually best left unsaid sometimes, right?
Right. I know. It reminds me of the old adage, always be selling. And I like to actually turn that on its head a little bit and say, always be storytelling, right? Because you just never know who has a connection to something that, or to someone that is apropos of what it is you're trying to do. And like I was just at, I mean, you never know, right? I was at a birthday party recently. And my startup is in the process right now of looking for seed funding. And I just happened to have a conversation at the table with a bunch of women celebrating one of our homegirls' birthday, and I was talking to them about being in the CMO of the startup, and we're looking for investors, and I left that party with like 3 different contacts to go follow up with about fundraising for that business. So yes, always be storytelling. You never know, right, who might be able to connect you to the right opportunity to help you move your agenda forward for your business and for your career.
Yeah, I really like that piece too, the storytelling piece, because again, one of the things we coach a lot of entrepreneurs for pitching, right? Their pitch competitions. That's part of our Latino Founders nonprofit. And one of the things I'm always telling them is like, make it relatable. Make whatever problem that you're trying to create a solution, or you found a solution for, make that problem relatable and the solution relatable. One example I always give is the AT&T commercial when they're on the airlines, right? And they're talking about the hidden fees behind, oh, he has a food or he has water. Oh yeah, it's because I paid extra dollar here. Again, AT&T is not an airline, but the hidden fees is something we can all relate to from a storytelling perspective, right? We all understand the annoyance of seeing those hidden fees, and all AT&T is saying, we're not them. We don't do hidden fees. Target is another great example. If you watch a Target commercial, seldomly do you see the actual Target logo until the end of the commercial. However, it's a Target commercial simply based on the amount of red they use in that commercial. It's like,
Mhm.
well, this is a Target commercial, isn't it? Because you see red all over it and they're happy. And, so branding is just not about, the words or
Right.
the message you're saying. It's also, how do you make people feel? Nike, right? Everybody's an athlete, right? Okay, you making me feel like it. The Apple, we're going back to the Apple. I have 1,000 songs in my pocket, So how do you make people feel? How does that brand make you feel? And even go sometimes further than that, right? The colors schemes. The blacks are kind of the more even neutral New York Times kind of thing. But then you got like the fun people like Yahoo, it's purple, right? And then you got like the calmness, the like Dell or innovation, right? The blue, so the Dell and the Microsoft, right? And so when you start to think about color codes and you start to look at the companies that are within those color codes, you're like, oh wait, that makes sense. That colors for innovation, or that colors for calmness, or that colors for truth, right? So that the shades of entrepreneurship were black and white, very, very, very specific. But the reason we're black and white is because we're really kind of in the truth area. I want you guys to feel like you're confident, you're getting knowledge, it's truthful, and I'm not picking any sides here. I'm just bringing true business education, things to help you continue proceed. In fact, Monique, one of the questions I have for you is, when you're thinking about marketing, you're thinking about growing your customer base, what are some key strategies for scaling a business? So your customer, growing your customer base and staying resilient during all, because you mentioned you had the 2008, 2009 crisis. How do you continue to scale your business and stay resilient through these times?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And as I was thinking about what you were just talking about in terms of the marketing ethos around your business, I think that's a great place to start when you think about scale, right? What is a lot of times what happens, I think, especially with smaller businesses, is that we kind of hit that wall, right? And There are a couple of things that entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs, tend to be doers, right? They tend to be very hands-on, and they tend to be super involved. And I think that when you get to a point where your business is starting to, if you will, get away from you a little bit, then it's time for you to think about how you scale. And I like to think of scale in terms of, how do I scale myself, right? How do I scale my team who's working in the business with me? And then how do I create scale for the solution that I'm delivering to my customer? So if we take each of those, so how do I scale me? First of all, I can't do everything. This is why, you know, you are the creative genius behind the business, or you are the marketing genius behind business, or whatever it is that you do is your expertise that you founded the business around, then yes, lean into that. But when it's time and you're bigger, and you're taking on more responsibility and you need more expertise, bring it on. Don't be afraid. Like I said, with my company that I'm currently the CMO for, the CEO was very forward thinking and very visionary in thinking about how to bring the marketing competence on sooner rather than later, because she realized that, hey, you know what, I'm the CEO. Even though she has a marketing background, that's how she built her reputation, that's how she built her career. But she's like, you know what, I can't be the CEO and the CMO. I gotta have a CMO, right? So if you are a CEO and you're doing everything, and you got, your hat on, you got 17, 18 hats going, something's got to give. So you got to start thinking about, how do you scale yourself, right? So that you offload the areas of responsibility that are best done by other people who have that expertise and who have that skill set, who have that competence, who have that perspective, because you will make yourself crazy if you try to do everything. So that's the first thing. So how to scale your team is related, right? You've got to let some stuff go, right? You got to delegate, you got to trust. I really like what you were talking about with the shades of E, Gabriel, and how, you know, you have really leaned into helping entrepreneurs with business education, right? And so, what does that look like in terms of how you are enabling the people who help you deliver that service, that product, quote unquote, to your audience, to your customers, about, how do they actually lean into their own way of supporting the business so that they are successful and so that they are contributing? Because if you have your hand in everything that they're doing, then nobody wants to work for that person. Nobody likes a micromanager. Nobody likes an egomaniac. Like, forget all that. So think about how you empower folks who are on your team, even if they're not directly your employees, right? How do you empower your partners? How do you empower your suppliers, your vendors, et cetera, right? Everybody, give them a stake in what it is that you're doing, and have them clearly see their pathway to your success being their success. And then scaling your solution, that's investing in, the infrastructure, that's investing in, that next set of capabilities that will really be transformative for the business. That's about being prudent from a financial standpoint. That's about, really, kind of growing organically and ensuring that, you're not hockey sticking too soon, right? And that, you've got credibility with real customers, and that you're ready to take that credibility onto the next set of customers, right? That's where, we are with our startup, Inactify.ai. We landed our first customer.
Guys,
Our company's only
congratulations.
been in business for like this year. It just started. It had kind of a pre-startup instantiation a couple years ago, and then we brought on kind of the professional management team this year, and so we got our first customer, and now we're ready, to take that customer case study to the next set of industry vertical customers that service that market. So, thinking about, like, making sure that, you are ready to go when it's time to go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it goes back to like the elevator speech, right? You're mentioning, no matter if you're trying to scale your business to sell it, or again, building up your own brand. Imagine yourself, folks, if you had an opportunity to, let's say Morgan Freeman, like you mentioned, you have an opportunity, you're innovative with Morgan Freeman, you see him at a hotel, you have 3 floors, and he asks you, so what do? You have 3 floors to pitch Morgan Freeman on enough information on a very short time frame, enough for him to engage and want to actually contact you again, right? That's the sales pitch. You have a very short time to talk about what your value is, your your value proposition, who you are, very brief amount of time. I'd highly recommend anybody out there to work on a value proposition, their own independent individual value proposition, create your own goal. So at the beginning of this year, I actually haven't looked at it this embrace growth, seek knowledge, and lead with purpose. That was actually my quote at the beginning of this year. And so that's what I've really been focusing on. And I have it up on the whiteboard. Yes, I have a whiteboard in my office, folks, in my home office. I know I'm that kind of guy. But again, it kind of keeps you things on track. And I really encourage, again, share your ideas, share your thoughts, network. I believe that the more culture you get, the more traveling you get, the more innovation you have. You start to learn more things. I mean, that's how Starbucks happened, right? Steve Jobs went to Europe. He says, I want to bring this concept to the United States. And now we have
Howard Schultz.
I'm Howard Schultz. Yes, Howard Schultz. I mean, I'm sure the iPod was probably somewhere over there as well.
Yeah, right.
But yes, Howard Schultz. And then if you go back and there's actually the Starbucks Way, the Howard Schultz book, you can go read that and it'll tell you exactly how he kind of did it. You can go read a lot of different books. The Lazy CEO is another good book to read. You're mentioning, your CEO, identifying you as the need for the CMO is really important because again, folks, as you begin to build and scale your business, you will not be able to be the jack of all trade, master of none once you kind of get to a certain time frame. So it's imperative that you bring an individual on your team that are right for the bus. Now, Monique, you mentioned you brought in your first client, you're starting to grow. What does the future look like? What's the next 5 years look like?
For me personally, or for our company?
Or you personally?
Oh, for me personally, honey, I'm trying to retire at some point. I've been doing this for a minute. So I'm thinking that I am reaching the pinnacle of my career. And what I really would love to be doing in 5 years, I think is a couple things. One, much like what you're doing with the shades of entrepreneurship, right? I really want to be in that giving back mode. I really want to be in that that coaching and advice giving, counseling, kind of mode, because by then, hopefully, I'll be rich beyond my belief because all of these ventures that I've been involved with will, have paid off enough that I can be like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take that call. So, so I think that's one thing. The other thing is, I mean, I think once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur, right? I mean, I've started, 3 businesses in the last 20 years, and I'm probably going to start maybe another 1 or 2 before long here. I guess I don't know. It all depends on what spirit's going to move me and what opportunity comes across my desk. Although I think my husband would beg to differ with that.
Oh yeah, my wife's like, yeah, you don't
He's gonna
have
be like,
more, you have no more
stop it.
heads to put hats on.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, how many more of these things are you going to try, Monique?
And I'm telling you, folks,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it's the significant others. I feel like my wife is I love her so much, and I'm very thankful that she lets me and puts up with me. I'd say she puts up with all these crazy entrepreneurial endeavors I have, and she's always right next. In fact, folks, if you have an opportunity, please go tell my wife how much I gush about her on the podcast, because I truly do. She is a rock star. It really has helped me quite a bit. So Monique, after retirement, let's say folks are, let's say myself in particular, you mentioned you want to get into the entrepreneurship world. You want to start educating and helping folks out. And as I mentioned, I got a 501c3 here locally.
Yeah.
We're looking for mentors. What if somebody's listening and interested in connecting with you? How do they get a hold of you?
Oh my goodness, I am trying to be famous. So you could just go simply to moniquehayward.com.
I love it.
And all of the ways that you can contact me are there. So all my social media channels, my direct email, my phone number, like everything is there. So absolutely, just yeah, go there. And then I'd love to connect with folks, particularly on LinkedIn, right? Because LinkedIn is definitely the place where that business to business networking really happens, and a lot of folks are there exploring and looking for opportunities. So yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, but definitely go to moniquehayward.com and check me out.
I love it. And again, folks, if you forget all of this information. Don't you worry, it will be available on theshadesofE.com. So please subscribe to the newsletter. We'll also have a transcription of this conversation, as well as the video will be available on YouTube. Again, those Patreon fans, $5 a month, you will get this episode a week early. A good opportunity for you to go ahead and jump on Patreon, and you can learn again all this information on theshadesofE.com. Monique, thank you again so much for joining the show. Again, we will be in contact because I think we will probably need some mentors in that marketing space. I'd love to connect you with a few other folks within the community that I think you will love to, like Stephen Green that runs Pitch Black, and Terozzi that's over there with Silicon Florist. I think you can, if you don't know them yet, they're phenomenal individuals here in the community. I think they have a lot of value to provide to you.
That's fantastic. No, I'm happy to help for sure, especially being right here in the Portland area. The
Yes,
Portland metro area.
the Portland metro
I'm down with the
area.
metro.
I'm
I'm not
telling you,
down with the
man.
metro.
Clackamas County goes all the way government camp. I'm not sure if you're counting Mount Hood Metro, but hey, let's do it, folks. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I would encourage anybody that's listening, please come out and visit the Pacific Northwest. We're 96,000 square miles of absolute beauty. We've got a lot of amazing people. I was down in Medford, Oregon just the other day, down in Phoenix over there, and they have a phenomenal food cart. You guys got to check out some Lebanese food. It's just great. I'm telling you, I gush about Oregon too often. Monique, again, thank you so much for being a guest on the Shades of Entrepreneurship. For folks listening, please subscribe at theshadesofE.com. You can also visit us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Again, thank you. Subscribe to the Shades of Entrepreneurship on theshadesofE.com. Thank you, and have a great night.